This was the last time Phoebe Handsjuk was seen alive. She never imagined that 7 hours later, her body would be found mysteriously lifeless in the garbage room of her building. A day before her death, her family received a strange text message that left everyone confused.
To me, right from the start, someone's put her in there.
With the intention to do what to her?
To kill her.
Phoebe's autopsy ended up revealing things that were decisive for the investigation, and an experiment was essential to reopen the case. But even with all the findings we'll see, Phoebe's death is a mystery still unsolved. However, years later, something unthinkable would happen and the main suspect was involved again. Who took her life? How did she get into the garbage chute? Who is the privileged suspect? That is the story of the woman who fell 11 stories into her building, and absolutely no one knows yet how she got there. December 2nd, 2010 was an ordinary day in Melbourne, Australia. A false fire alarm caused Phoebe to evacuate her building with her dog at 11:44 a.m., where she was last seen. 6 hours later, her body was found lifeless in the common trash room of her building. Somehow, she squeezed through a tiny opening in a garbage chute in the hallway of her building and fell 11 stories, impacting the floor of the place.
Well, there was blood all over. She'd crawled, she'd pulled herself right around the room, trying to find a way out.
But how did she get there? How did she get through a narrow garbage chute on her own? Her parents were completely stunned. They couldn't believe their spirited daughter was gone. It was her boyfriend, Anthony, who had given them the news of her disappearance over the telephone, and later the police who confirmed her death. Although Anthony had noticed her disappearance hours earlier, he did not want to call the police as he was sure his girlfriend would return. Why did he stand by and wait? What was he trying to hide? Traces from his apartment indicated that there had been an altercation minutes earlier. Bloodstains were found on the table and broken glass on the floor, along with 2 wine glasses. The autopsy revealed that Phoebe had cut her finger, which would explain the broken glass. However, although all indications were that something had happened prior to the misfortune and that perhaps someone was with her, the forensic experts determined almost immediately that the tragedy had been provoked by herself. All this because they found high levels of narcotics and alcohol in her body, something that Anthony had warned about. The levels of alcohol found in Phoebe were 3 times higher than the legal amount of narcotic drugs could have caused her to sleepwalk. The main theory is that she walked in her sleep barefoot into the hallway of the building, entered the duct, and jumped in alone. Would that be possible in that state? After suspicions of possible involvement, the coroner's assistant recommended leaving the case open to receive new information. Instead, her life was not taken seriously, and her case was closed as a substance-induced accident. Despite this evidence, the forensic experts prevented samples from being sent for analysis and the interception of her electronic devices, which hindered the investigation. Who were they trying to protect? However, her parents were not going to sit idly by. They were both certain that this was a sinister crime. Phoebe Handsjuk was born on May 9, 1986, in Melbourne, Australia. Her parents are Natalie and Len, a psychiatrist, who later had 2 more children, Tom and Nikolai. From a very young age, Phoebe was very much an explorer and artist, thus developing her poetry. She is described by her acquaintances as a very friendly and caring person. Her passion for art led her to study creative arts at the Melbourne Centre for Adult Education a year before her death. However, she also had a dark side. At the age of 15, she started hanging out with the wrong people, experimenting with strong narcotics. This led to major episodes of mood swings and substance addiction, having to take antidepressants from an early age.
It was a short but intense and, dynamic life she led, and it had its ups and downs, and she drove it like she stole it.
At the time of her passing, Phoebe was 24 years old and living with her boyfriend of 43 years, Anthony Hampel. But their relationship was going through repeated ups and downs. 6 weeks before the tragedy, the couple had ended their courtship more than 4 times.
She was conflicted. She was trying to get away from a relationship that she wasn't totally happy in. She had quite strong feelings for the fellow she was with, but at the same time she recognised that it was going nowhere and she wanted to get out of there.
Phoebe's grandfather, a former police officer in Melbourne, knew something was wrong, and he would not stand idly by. There was only one known person near the scene of the tragedy who might be involved: Anthony Hampel, Phoebe's boyfriend.
I believe that she was put into the chute by someone else.
And who do you believe that person to be?
I don't know. I don't know who that would be.
Anthony Hampel was born in 1969 in Melbourne, Australia. Since he was a child, he had always been involved in sports such as skiing and water polo. He studied art and design at the Victorian College of the Arts and went on to found 2 event and entertainment companies. When he turned 40 in 2009, he met Phoebe Handsjuk. At that time, Ant was already fully dedicated to events and parties with a long career of 15 years. The night of the event, Ant arrived home around 6 p.m. He entered the apartment and saw Phoebe's purse and keys. He thought this was a bit strange, as she never left home without them. There were also 2 glasses with broken glass on the floor. He quickly decided to call her father because that same night they had plans to go to dinner with him. However, no one knew of her whereabouts, but something had happened the night before that worried them. The family received a strange text message from her that left everyone very confused. Her father immediately knew something wasn't right and insisted Ant please call the police. But her boyfriend was convinced she had gone off on her own, and with no hope at all, he sat down to wait for her return. He was strangely very calm. So calm, he even ordered food delivered to his apartment to watch television. Around 7 p.m. that same day, a big commotion started in the building. The police had arrived. Ant let his food get cold, went down to the lobby, and approached a detective. After asking what was going on, the detective realized that Phoebe had been found lifeless in the trash compactor room. Ant immediately gave descriptions of his girlfriend to help with the investigation, and he took the opportunity to mention that she was on a lot of medication and that she wasn't right in the head. Police were quick to determine that she had taken her own life, leaving all the doors closed to a possible involvement. For her grandfather, Lorne Campbell, who again is a former Melbourne police officer, it was clear that this had not been an accident.
To me, right from the start, someone's put her in there.
With the intention to do what to her?
To kill her.
However, Phoebe's grandfather and mother weren't going to give up, and after 11 long years of hard work, they conducted a key experiment to bring it all back into question. The family members conducted an experiment on a set, recreating from scratch and identically the scene of the disgrace, with a girl who was the same age and physical build as Phoebe at the time of her death.
Do whatever you have to do to get into this. Really try hard. Try and do it.
When you see it like that, it's very small, isn't it? I feel like I need to help you.
The girl tried several times on her own to open the gate that would direct Phoebe into the garbage chute and fit into the small gap left to pass through, but to no avail. It was completely impossible. In addition, the detective's theory that Phoebe had entered the chute under narcotics and that she had fallen with her arms at her sides completely fell apart, since it was physically impossible to fit both arms in such a small space. If the girl was sober at the time of the experiment and Phoebe was apparently sleepwalking, How did she manage to enter the duct in such a state? But there was something else. The television program under investigation also wanted to join the investigation and recreated the scene, uncovering something completely shocking. When they added a second person, a man who was picking her up in his arms, it became clear how quick and easy it was to get her into the garbage chute. There was no doubt that someone was involved. Despite the experiments, Anthony Hampel was never considered a suspect. However, 8 years later, the unthinkable happened. Anthony decided to go ahead and in 2018 began a new relationship with Bailey Petra Schneider, a 25-year-old model and evening dancer. Months passed and the relationship seemed to be going great. However, after a short time, their love was falling apart and they were arguing a lot by text. One night, Bailey stayed with Anthony, but after an argument, he abruptly broke up with her. Very depressed, the woman took a cab to her parents' house and stayed there watching a movie on her couch while her brother was in another room. Hours later, her parents arrived and found her lifeless on the kitchen floor. Blood dripped from her nose and a ribbon from her bedroom curtain was found knotted around her neck. The coroner found traces of narcotics and an excessive level of alcohol, 3 times higher than legal. Looks familiar? Bailey was 1.72 centimeters tall, and there was nowhere to hang in the kitchen, and her brother had seen her arguing with Anthony on the phone shortly before the tragedy. The family was pretty sure there was one person involved. In addition, reports indicated that 3 weeks prior to her demise, Bailey had coincidentally cashed in her life insurance. Had Anthony tried to take it? Unusually, Bailey's death was ruled to have been self-inflicted by neck compression. No one wanted to investigate, and in 2020, the case was closed. But there is something fundamental that the media is not saying. Anthony is the son of former Supreme Court Justice George Hampel and stepson of County Court Judge Felicity Hampel. It was his father himself who told Channel 9 that police were never able to seize images and video from the building at the time of the tragedy. Recall that the police did not want to examine Phoebe's electronic devices? It was the family who managed to recover the devices sometime later, but suspiciously, all her emails and sent messages had been deleted.
We haven't got the truth about what happened, what really happened, and we don't have any justice for Phoebe.
The inconsistencies in the case have motivated the family to keep investigating without the help of the police. One of Phoebe's phones has never been found. There are also no traces of fingerprints on the outside of the garbage dump, nor blood. And although the reenactment experiments helped reopen the case in 2021, none of it was enough for justice. Phoebe and Bailey dated a man much older than them, and both ended up lifeless. Will it be a coincidence or a true crime without justice? Australia's judicial system was put into check, and today there are more questions than answers surrounding the demise of the 2 women. What about you? Do you think Anthony should be considered a suspect? Or do you think there is enough evidence to determine that there was no involvement? What we do know is that to this day, there has been no justice for Phoebe Handsjuk. And even if her boyfriend was a suspect, he is protected completely and forever.